Good afternoon, everyone. Pleasure to have all of you here. Today's topic that we're talking about is, can India be a design global destination? I have been doing a lot of projects for IT, and always I have wondered, there used to be huge campuses with thousands of people working there straight out of college. And what always used to surprise me is, how are these guys been able to deliver a global product? India has always been looked upon as a destination where resources are really available at the best price in the world, and any resources with an average good intellect, people have trained them to deliver something which has been accepted globally. Now, question here today is, till date, India has been selling man hours. People have been paying $6 to $10 per hour. The question here is, will India be able to sell brain hours instead of man hours? So my first question goes to our panelists, and I'll introduce this panelist as and when we start conversing. We have two architects and two academicians on this panel. Now, my first question goes to Pranav. Pranav Desai is again a very close friend, an architect. And what I want to tell about him is, there are architects who most of the people know by names. But if you ask them, do you know the buildings that this architect has designed? And people don't have an answer to it. But whereas when it comes to Pranav, you would know most of the buildings designed by him, but people know him in the industry. But generally, he is a person who's very soft spoken and very rarely on webinars and events. So if I tell some names of the building that Pranav has designed, you would be able to relate to him. Metro Cinema building is designed by him. Raheja Sherwood, which is just behind Hub Mall, is designed by him. Whistling Woods is another project which is designed by him. Most of the buildings in Mindspace are designed by him. Apart from that, Tata Amantra, am I correct, Pranav? Which is one of the largest project near Kalyan, has been designed by him. So we have been...
Vivaria is also done by us.
Vivaria has been done by him. So Pranav, the first question goes to you, is can India be a design hub in near future?
Thanks, Swapnil. First of all, I don't want to sound negative, but I don't see it happening in the near future, because there are reasons to that. Because if you see, like in 2005, there was like a wave where these IT and BPO companies came into in India, and there was like a lot of hue and cry about it. And what happened is that at that time, the government decided to, formulate a policy to make India as the global design hub. The Indian Design Council was also appointed. They formulated the rules in 2007. Nothing happened till 2016. The rules changed in 2016. The policies changed. And we are in 2020 and still nothing has happened on that.
So there was an attempt, you say, to make India as a global design hub.
Yeah, in 2005. It started in 2005.
And there was a ministry for it.
Yeah, there were two policies also which came in, one in 2007 and one in 2016.
So
but till today, nothing has happened. But why? It's very interesting to know why nothing has happened.
So I think let's go to Gaurish. I always ask him this one very important question. To tell you briefly about Gaurish. Gaurish is the most enthusiastic academician that I've ever seen. I taught with him in his college on his request for a while, and he was the first principal. He wanted students to come early to college, so he gave them an entire cricket set so that they land up in college at 7 o'clock in the morning and start their lectures at 8 o'clock in the morning. Am I right, Gaurish?
Partly.
Okay. So taking this clue, that why this council which was established did not really work, I want to ask you one very important question, and you can relate both the things together. We've always seen young Mark Zuckerberg. We have seen young Steve Jobs. But we have never seen young Lee Corbusier. We have never seen young Korea, or we have never seen young B.V. Doshi. Why does this happen?
Thank you very much for having me on this talk on design. As an academician, I hope I'll bring in some value, at least from my personal point of view. Uh, to answer your second question first, is primarily, I believe that we are conditioned from very young age to perhaps follow a certain kind of skill training or profession because it has a certain status in society. And our mindset in the, because a large amount of people come from the middle class, the mindset is primarily to ensure that you have a job and then you have a salary, and then that salary becomes your anchor to become so-called successful, and so on and so forth. So that conditioning has to change. We need to make our youth a little more independent. We need to make our youth a little more risk taking, a little more free thinking in mind. And I think that process is on to a certain extent, thanks to the social media that we have. So we will get Mark Zuckerberg and we will get the young Bill Gates. But as parents now, or as parents to be, or parents to come, I think we need to take them to, we should allow them to be more risk taking. Hopefully, if that happens, we will have our people coming in.
So,
So
how
answering,
long do you think it will take? Let's ask one before we go ahead. Let me take first one poll question to audience. Can we have the poll? When poll question, please. Let us see what audience think. When do you think India can be a design hub? The question is, by when do you think will India be a global destination for design? 2030, 2050, or not in our lifespan? We panelists cannot vote.
yeah, I realize that. That's not fair.
So let's see what is the result of the poll. 38% say 2030, 45% people say 2050, and not in our lifespan, only 7% people are saying that. So what's the clue, Gaurish, from this?
I agree with the 2030 guys, because as I was coming to the first question part of it, is that there is a certain amount of time lag between the practice and academics, and that time lag has to be reduced. There has to be a certain amount of give and take between academicians and practice and academicians. So if the design council, along with the designers, the serious designers, if you can get them together, tell them these policies. Many people don't know of the policies, don't know of the design council itself. They are aware of some things. If we can get them together and deliberate on a common platform, and now is the good time because we have these comforts of the home and the webinars to put up. If we can get them together, I think there will be a certain positive step forward towards forming India as a design center. I would not call it a design hub. I will not say that it will be the place to be, but I think it will be one of the pivots in which things will roll. The design systems will roll out. That will be a great thing to put up.
So my question again goes to anybody in the panel is, what was this council really all about? You have the answer? Yeah, Pranav. Yeah, please.
Yeah, see, this council was basically formed by the government, and actually the National Institute of Design was the key agency which formed that council, and there was a separate council. Separate council, Indian Design Council, was formulated to make the rules or a 5-year plan to take India to the next level. Like there were BPOs and IT companies coming in, and basically there was no follow-up plan from done in terms of what action they wanted to do. Why it did not happen is also very interesting. It did not happen because every hub or every design hub has to be very cosmopolitan in nature. A lot of different people from different worlds have to come in, different ideas, different thoughts. It has to be like an innovative ecosystem, which is not there in any of the Indian cities. Number two, very important, is that your economic and political situation didn't really demand that, or they didn't really support that. The taxation structure in India is totally deterrent to any company coming in. there are taxes, any other cities like pay taxes in the tune of 15 to 20%. India has a tax rate of 30 to 35%. So why will any, company come in? And even if they come in, whether they are going to make money, that is also a question mark. Another thing is that they have these double tax avoidance agreements. So you need to be taxed only in one of the countries, not in the two countries. These kind of agreements are not there in any, we don't have any agreement with any other countries. So, these are the things. And there is the one most important thing is that there is no government will. Now, the government wants, the Singapore government wants the Singapore to be the next design hub.
Right.
They are actually putting resources in. They are putting, the Singapore Design Week is actually funded by the government. The promotions are funded by the government. So government is actively involved in promoting, the design, promoting it to be a global destination. The government in here is not doing anything in that. So according to me, other than talent, we don't have anything going in our way.
No, but if you look at IT, it was the IT companies who came together and lobbied the government to make it as an IT destination.
Yeah, but that's not happening with the design firms.
Gaurish, do you have any points on this? Because I'm sure you are so well connected with council, and council would be knowing about it. And with a lot of changes which is happening in the council, is there an attempt which is happening to make a lobby to speak about design?
No, first, let me clear it out that I'm not really well versed with the council works, but yes, as much as Pranav does, we do read about it. I always feel that we sit down as citizens hoping that the government will do something. And that's where the whole problem starts, is that we wait for some kind of work to happen. I think it's time that we take upon ourselves to move the government, move the policies, help them to see what is there in that. Just a point to take from, just a cue to take from what Pranav said was that in 2005, I think the movement of entrepreneurship started, the initial stage. Of course, now it is carrying on to become a larger thing, but that time it started. And most of the education system that we have was primarily dated to make employees. If you look at all the dated education system, you would say कि इनको काम कराना है. जैसे architecture में भी आप देखोगे तो we give emphasis on drafting because we want draftsmen. We don't want designers. We don't want people who will come out and sketch and give the thing out. If you look at IIT, they have training sessions where they go into industry to become, employees at the managerial, sub-managerial level. So it's time that we move this situation in a manner whereby we start looking at entrepreneurs. And 2005, it failed because, as he rightly pointed out, the practice didn't come in. The practice needs to come into this situation. Once they come in, they become much more solid to work out. And it is always a give and take. It's a yin and yang. Start coming together, start forming a group, and people will listen to you. मेरा always ऐसा है कि हम लोग ना आवाज एक साथ करोगे ना तो चलता है, नहीं तो नहीं चलता.
Dhara is smiling. I think Dhara has to add something.
Yeah, no, I agree to what Pranav said, and what he mentioned rightly was that Singapore, this in one of the project where we were also quoting and we were the architects, but they were looking out for interior designers to be taken on panel, and that is where this was the Novotel Visakhapatnam project. And I do remember that the interior designer fees that came in from Singapore as against the leading interior designers who did quote from here, the fees were very competitive, rather, much lesser or lucrative for the client to go for them. And that is when I happened to, then interact with some of the designers and finally the person who was on the panel. And I did realize that the government policies are very supportive and friendly in terms of taxations and things like that. That is how they can quote such fees to, come and look into markets like India, which is a developing country. There is a lot of potential for growth, but Indians are, somewhere losing out, and people are coming in, and no doubt, I mean, there are a lot of factors that come into picture. But like you asked ahead earlier, I would feel, and I want to say that maybe we have to look at 2050 perhaps, because we have a long way to go. There are a lot of reforms that need to happen at various stages, and then there has to be a cohesive or collective action and a willingness to move ahead in this direction. We definitely have the design potential that cannot be challenged, but at the same time, to bring it out in the right way, to bring out the creativity, there is a lot more that needs to go into it.
Well said. Dhara, you have been designing a lot of work. I mean, again, the way Pranav is, I'm sure a lot of people know your structures also. You have designed Jupiter Hospital, which is in Thane and Pune. A lot of Novotel projects, Vishakhapatnam Novotel, which is again a huge hotel, has been designed by you. Vasant Vihar, which is a huge township, which has been designed by you in Thane. Parkwoods is another project which is done by you. So you have been interacting with a lot of international architects, and you have been seeing a lot of your clients preferring international architect. Now, do they really bring something which is, unique on table, apart from fat fees? Now you're seeing the fees are also very competitive. Yes. So do you find really some difference that they bring you on table today from a design perspective?
I do believe that in some specialized projects, there can be some amount of real value addition, what you may call, or some expertise or experience or ideas which they bring in to that table. But today what the scenario is that everybody wants to go and get a foreign or international architect, and that is not more for the design value, but for the branding, marketing of the project, that, oh, I have got an international touch. And because initially the fees were very fat, or, kind of not everybody could go in for a designer from London. But now you have got alternative options available. Now, practically the layman or even the client does not understand that there is not always a value addition. And sometimes the sensitivity to the local factors also goes missing, unless it is those kind of architects that they have hired for the project, or it is that kind of a specific requirement of the project that really needs so.
Pranav, do you have something to add to this? Because you also have interacted with a lot of international architects, and I'm sure they really do bring something on the table, or their way of, question I would ask is, they come here, why can't we go out and work?
No, see,
what is the difference?
What Dhara said is correct. They bring a value to certain kind of projects, like airports or convention centers, hotels, mixed-use buildings, where the exposure of the Indian architect is much lesser. Because they have much more. Like for convention center, they must have done 7-8 convention centers, and they must be doing their 8th or 9th one over here. So so in those kind of sectors, they really bring a lot on the table. Another thing is that there is a lot of foreign direct investment coming into India, and there are a lot of global funds which are investing in large projects. So they are more comfortable with a name which is a known, and they are more comfortable with a global architectural firm than an Indian. So that is one of the reasons why these larger projects are going in for the the international firms. Another very important thing is that there is a perception by the developers that the international name helps in marketing. But that really doesn't, it's not really tested out. We really don't know whether it's actually true or false. Then they have a lot of they will bring a lot of value in terms of the way they approach kind of a design over there when they approach a client. So that's something which we need to learn. Another thing is that there are many instances where the international architects have come in, they have not been able to give a lot of value to the projects. And any Indian architect or any Indian architectural firm could have done much better in terms of the design.
Let me interrupt. What is it that stops us to go global, and what is it that makes them go global? See, I remember the incident where you told me once that they came to your office, 10 of them from Japan, and they caught hold of everybody. Can you narrate that incident? That's something very interesting.
No, see what I feel, they have a very set kind of a, they are very process driven. They can go into the any kind of context or any kind of a city, they learn their bylaws, they learn their culture, they learn the way the market is functioning, and they bring it into a kind of a document format. And they relate the design very quickly to the parameters which they have, researched. So, and the process is very very, streamlined, and another very important thing is that, we have like come across architects working from, say, Australia, UK, USA, Dubai, Singapore, Japan, even Hong Kong, but their way of working is all the same. The way of deliverable, the way of presentation is very similar. It's like, as if they're coming out of one school. So they have kind of formulated that standard, which the Indian architects are yet struggling. Like if you see like a smaller firm versus a bigger firm in the Indian context, there will be a vast difference in what the deliverables are. So that is something which we really need to, bring in. Another very important thing which we need to learn is the knack of closing a design. They are in a very short time, they have the, contact with the client. They are like maybe 3 days in a month, or maybe in 2 months, they have like 3 days of workshop with the client. In that 3 days, they bring and they come out with the design, they close designs very fast. And by the time they leave, the sign off is already given. So that is something which we need to learn. I remember one incident where we had a workshop. Their first cut had already come in. The whole day we had a workshop, and the client made drastic changes. They made changes to the unit configuration. They made changes to the, they removed the retail, added that FSI into residential. They removed one tower, added few floors on the other 3 towers. Drastic changes. We ended the workshop at 7 o'clock. Next day morning at 9 o'clock, they had all the plans, revised plans, parking layouts, revised renders, SketchUp models. Everything was presented at 9 o'clock a.m.
How did they do it?
That's
Did you ask them?
I have seen that.
No, so see, so what they did is that at 7:30 they broke for. They must have gone back to the hotel at 8 o'clock, had their dinner. 8 to 9, they must have done their internal meetings, sent the drawings to China or UK, wherever, and seamlessly the team understood what was, what are the changes required. And at 8 o'clock in the morning, those changes were brought. They just took printouts, and at 9 o'clock it was presented.
So communication was the important factor. That the way they communicated very seamlessly.
And it was all documented. It was not that they had a video call or something. It was just a PDF document which they were creating at the time they were doing the meeting. So it was not something which they had done something different. The documentation was done straight away as the meeting got over. They emailed it. Some other team started working somewhere around the world.
So Shabbir sir, can you unmute? Gaurish and Shabbir sir, both of you. I mean, Shabbir sir is also a great academician. He has been teaching for the last 25, 30 years. Today we are struggling to do online architectural classes. And here, people are doing real projects online. Where is the gap?
Fast internet.
Huh?
Fast internet.
Fast internet.
Understanding. We are still infant stage. We are still at an infant stage where we have not still studied the Zoom calling.
Okay.
Technology is still not advanced that much. Understanding.
Gaurish, you should be knowing this, how to seamlessly integrate and communicate.
Exactly.
So I agree with what Shabbir sir is saying, that we need to be aware of the technology. But I somehow answered this question earlier, is that we are not being able to condition ourselves to express ourselves, and of course for expressing ourselves, we need to do the homework well, because they do that. And to some extent, the fault lies in the to some extent. I do not take the full onus on the academics, but to some extent the thing lies in how to get the academics and practice together. If there is a need for developing a design within 12 hours, then I think that need has to be specified, that needs to be spoken to in the academic world. And the academician should start training the young students to express themselves with the limited time, but with maximum understanding. That vision of what is required in practice needs to come back to the academia. And I think once this classically thing comes into the place, there will be an enrichment of the teaching training methodologies, and everything will fall in place. I think our generation is by far very aware, very apt, and they can perhaps bring in a better design quality in our context. But it is requirement, that bridge, that gap has to be come together. If you can bridge that gap, you will achieve success.
Do
And
you
you
feel
will have
Western
12
world?
hours. You will have the same kind of design intensity in 12 hours. In fact, our guys will give you in 6 hours, because we are very hardworking. We can work like donkeys to give you the thing, much better than what the Western world is.
But that's
But
where,
opportunity has to be brought in.
because we can work like donkeys, we are being paid by man hours and not by brain hours.
That is a choice, because हमको ना थोड़ा डॉलर मिला तो हम खुश हो जाता है.
Hey.
हमको ना वो कैलकुलेशन हो जाता है उसमें.
Yeah,
अरे
but-
No, one more very important thing which we need to learn is that, if you are like, there is a kind of a standardization of deliverables which the international architects or, they give on the table. Even if you have a small firm, like a single, one man show, or like a 3 or 4 people, 10 people firm, versus like a large firm like 700, 800, coming onto the table, the deliverables will be more or less similar. I'm not talking about the design. I'm talking about the quality of work which they put onto the table, the way they present, the way they, standardize drawings, documentation, the GFCs which they produce, the way they explain the design is very similar. So it is something which they have, got from the education system. That's what I feel.
Yeah. No, agreed. I'm saying that it comes from the education system, but the offices and the practice should come back with a vision to say, this is what we want now for the next 20 years.
Let's ask one poll question to audience. There's something
let me tell you that, Pranav, including your office and Dhara's office also, there are many offices now which are up to the mark now. Let me be very categorical. Our offices are at par, if not better. If our office in deliverables are at par at the thing. But that mindset, that structuring, that process, those what you call SOPs categorically, has to be brought in. And academia is waiting for such kind of discussion. At least I am.
There's one question which I want to put to audience, and then we can take questions to the panelists. Can we have the next question, please? Which one of the below makes a person more creative? Is it the exposure? Is it the genes, that is lineage, no fear attitude, or meditation? Audiences, you can keep asking questions. We will pick up the questions and we'll throw it to our panelists. I'm sure you people are enjoying it. What's the answer on the poll? Exposure is the highest. Everybody's speaking. Genes is just 3%. No fear attitude is 20%, and meditation is 3%. So exposure is what people are talking about. Dhara, you had to say something. You wanted to speak something. So do you think the Western world has got more exposure as students, or, as they're traveling and group tottering? You had to say something, please. I just interrupted.
I was actually going to add to what Gaurish was first mentioning, but since we have this question here, I will, better attend to this. And what I feel is that exposure does make a lot of difference, but design and creativity has a lot of, subjective contribution. And that subjective or intuitive quality is, you know, not east or west. It is inherent. Everybody can, you know, kind of develop it, or, you know, kind of groom it in that manner. It needs to be groomed, but it is there. It is inherent with a lot of us. Exposure adds to it. Your keen vision, your eye for detail, all that, you know, adds to it. But it comes from within, and that is why that creativity, that balance to strike and to, you know, kind of come out with a good design solution cannot be, you know, forgotten. I mean, yes, exposure and everything will come with it, but I won't rate that. I will just go back, if you don't mind, to what Gaurish was saying earlier. And when he said about this, you know, that our students can really perform better. And I have heard that initially, or in even 50 years back, the colleges had, even I think we have given those exams, wherein we had a whole day of design exam extending to the next day, and you come up with the result. But we were at that time working with hand. Now there is a lot of software and technology that can add to it, and these exams also. So, you know, a lot of things can change there. I'm sorry to go back, but I really felt that, you know, something where, you know, people have done so many things practically. Even in JJ College of Architecture, when we used to study, we used to see that this was made by the students themselves. That practical learning part of, you know, making one small piece of furniture or object, or, you know, handling wood, will give you more knowledge. At the same time, these kind of exams, which can be, you know, again brought into, I don't know, Gaurish is better to, you know, kind of guide us further on that, but I think those things should be given some kind of importance or a rethinking.
Shabbir Patel, sir, do you have to add something what Dara is saying? Do you agree with what she's saying, that experiential learning is the need of an hour?
100%. Experience is very much necessary, plus exposure. Academically, you should be sound.
But to tell you very frankly, most of the innovations have happened with people who did not have an experience. And many times your experience also becomes your curse, because you get programmed to think in a particular.
No, because those people who have literally practically worked, they have come out with innovation.
Gaurish, do you have any different thought to it?
No, taking the kind of discussion on where does the creativity really comes from. I think there are perhaps, as they say, there are many paths up the mountain, but the view from the top is the same. It is for an individual to decide whether you really want to get into the design field, and what is your perception of design, and what is your approach and end of what design is like. People take up design as a fashion statement. You know, once you become a designer, then you have a ponytail and you have earrings and you have a torn jeans, and then you have lots of
You have a beard.
And you have a beard. So people think that as a fashion statement, when actually it's not. It's actually of human service. A designer is a human service. You need to do that particular act to the society to give them a solution to make their lives easy, manageable, make it optimum, and so on and so forth. So to become that, you need to have perhaps the genes which comes from your family, or perhaps a mindset that has been brought in from the ambience or the the things which you are grown up in. But to become that also, you need to be a good human being. You can't be a designer because you have good genes. You can't be a designer because you've taken admission in NID or any of the design institutes. You need to continue that practice. It's called practice because you need to continue right up till the end. And as you become older, you have the sense of compassion, empathy, sympathy coming in, you will tend to give solutions which are appropriate. And I think that is what real creativity is all about. And meditation, spirituality, complete awareness of what is happening, politics, manipulation, diplomacy, all this is part of your design understanding. So if you are part of it, well, you will definitely tend to become a good designer. You cannot stand apart and say, hey, I'm from NID, and I have nothing against NID, okay, I'm sorry. But if I'm from NID, hey, I'm a great designer. No, that doesn't happen.
So you feel these things need to be a part of the education system?
Absolutely. I'm for it. For the last so many years, I'm saying it's a package. You cannot say that मैं architect बन गया, मेरे को degree मिल गया. हो ही नहीं सकता boss, हो ही नहीं सकता, because you are here to serve the society. ये पहली बात हमने दिमाग में लेनी चाहिए. उसके बाद फटे हुए jeans, and that is not really a fashion statement. That's a really a हालत of ours. पैसा नहीं मिलता तो फटे हुए jeans में. So we are so creative. We also design our clothes as per our circumstances.
So
Not all, okay, I'm just joking. Please take it as a joke.
So we want to go to the next question because we have very little time left and we would like audience to participate in this question. Can we have the next poll question? If we feel West is ahead in terms of innovation, what has led it the most? Is it the history? Is it the culture? Is it the knowledge? Or was it the climate? Think and answer this. And again, the question is, what has led it the most? Knowledge is 53%. Culture is 33%. History is 13%. And climate is 3%. So the question goes to our panelist, Mr. Shabir.
Yeah.
Do you agree with the audience that?
Let me come back and let you know what I have thought of it.
Okay.
Human needs to explore and conquer have often led to need of innovation. Our history as humans is driven by important discoveries. The discovery of fire brought us out of the forest. And nobody can argue with the fact that the industrial revolution and the information and digital age have changed the way we interact with each other. Technology and innovation have prevented and cured diseases. They have helped us to produce food more effectively. They have helped us to take care of increased population and minimize lower birth deaths. And they have helped us, the world becoming more interconnected. Climate change is also an innovation, help in innovation. Climate change brings about economic pressures and resource scarcity. For instance, it has resulted in crop loss, increased food shortages, and famine. Climate change has also been associated with migration, group conflict, and warfare. Simply put, we found that necessity was the biggest driving force for innovation. Now coming to the vital question, is West ahead in terms of innovation? Some of the facts, Eastern civilization were well known for unique and advanced technology like the Indus Valley civilization. As time passed, innovation in these recent regions were more local than global.
Okay.
For example, if a great-grandmother wanted to develop something and she had a fantastic idea to develop a domestic appliances, the chances are she would make it and use it. She doesn't think, I should make a business out of it. Let me call up a lawyer and patent it and get it manufactured so that thousands, hundreds and thousands of women like me can use it. Moreover, collective culture and free thought of expression were always discouraged in our society. On the other hand, the Western individual culture celebrates uniqueness and creativity. They always think if it is unique, let's celebrate. But here we were at a setback. We could not celebrate because somebody was always ahead of us.
I
Think back
feel
a little in history. The age of exploration led to several inventions such as modern transportation, medicine, gunpowder. And the colonization of East by the West meant that the West had all the intellectual property no matter where it originated. Today we see a different picture. Countries like Japan, China, and India have closed the gap regarding technology, in some areas already more advanced than the West. I would like to leave a note behind a thought. The USA is trying to build a wall around their country in 2020, whereas China has already built a wall thousands of years ago. So I think the East has more developed than the West.
Any panelist has to add anything to this? Dhara? Yeah.
Yes, I think that it is well established and known to people that ancient Indian wisdom and innovation have in fact traveled from east to west. And somehow, due to couple of hundred years of all the slavery and invasions that India went through just before that, the scenario has changed, and it has kind of reversed, wherein the other countries definitely got ahead of us in terms of industrial revolution coming there, in terms of development, in terms of technology. And also to rule on a country, they needed to proclaim that they were giving us something superior. So the whole education system then was also kind of changed from the ancient order or the way of education. So what I would like to differ or say is that innovation has always been a part of this culture. Development, or when you rightly mentioned, Shabir, Mr. Shabir, about the Harappa and Mohenjo-daro civilization, or Hampi as a planned city for that matter, planned towns, sensitive and sustainable architecture or designs that have developed and grown here. I just think that it is time for us to believe in ourselves first and foremost. I mean, we have to begin with that we have to, it's about rediscovering what you had, what you are, and what you are capable of. That is the first thing that we need. And definitely, there is a collective action required. Like initially in the discussion, we mentioned that IT people came together, and, so there has to be some collective action in the direction where we want to progress. And I think there will be hurdles, but they can be overcome.
Gaurish, you wish to add anything to this?
No, I think most of it is just put in this place. And what I will say is only perhaps repeat what Shabir and Dhara have already said in this whole process. There may be a just slight one shift in that, but I think it's well said. I think most of
In fact, I personally feel, history has been responsible. A simple thing I would say in terms of innovation, India did not participate in World War II or World War I directly. And all the countries that actually participated in World War I and World War II had to innovate to protect themselves. Population in Eastern world was always higher, all throughout the history. And in our country, human capital was the capital. So machines were actually not needed. And that's where maybe the need for innovation was not as high as that was there in the Western world. Now, if you look at US also, US is ahead of the world because it develops a perspective. It is the US which taught us saying that, wearing black or gray is formal. And the entire world followed it. So as Indians, where we have failed is creating a perspective to the global world. We, as Pranav was last time discussing with me, the time that international architects put on design is 20%, but they put 80% of the time in terms of presenting it and selling it well. Am I right, Pranav?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
And the way they build a story around it, makes it look more interesting and more believable. And possibly that's where, to an extent we fail.
True.
So, do you think it's happening, Gaurish? You have seen students over a period of 20 years. Is there a change in that? Are we going towards globalization at academic level?
I think the academicians will kill me. not to the speed at which it should.
Yeah.
It is happening, but not at the speed at what it should. If you look at our students who go abroad to do their masters, they perform better because of the certain rigor that we have inculcated at the academic level here. So when they go there, they are already into the rigor of perhaps performing better. So that means we have trained them well. We need to skill them up. We need to make them aware. We need to add them. We have trained them well. So there's a full marks at that. As far as the process of what is whether the West is ahead of us or West is behind us, I think it's more to do with first the geography, the climate, which brings in innovation. And what we feel and what they feel is two different things. If you look at our history, and I'm asking you to look at the purest form. We are a civilization that believes in sustainability. Our entire practices in the earlier times was sustainability. Means आप अगर summer है तो आप ये करो, winter है तो ये करो, rains है तो ये करो, ये खाओ, and you can be healthy and happy. That was our system, and there was no need for, as Shabir bhai said, that there is no need for patenting anything. It was their boss. You also celebrate, we also celebrate, and we all have fun and we live happily. So that has to be perhaps documented, which was verbal in nature. Now the requirement is to be put in paper and whatever to be done. So our requirements of innovation, our requirements of design is a tad bit different than what the Western world is. But you're right that we ape the Western world. We believe that that is correct, and we live by it. If you look at the recent 2.5 months that we've all spent in COVID, you'll realize that nobody went for Domino's and nobody went for KFCs, and we still had our feeding habits correct. And I wouldn't be surprised if our immunity levels are much higher now to take care of COVID when we go out. So there will be COVID, people will have COVID, but I think there will be lesser deaths and lesser serious mishaps because our immunity levels are higher. So I think we are doing a good job. I think we should keep them separate.
So West has always been selling design, and they think that design has been their prerogative. They came up with the concept called design thinking, which was not done by architects or creative guys. It was done by management guys.
Yeah, yeah.
And in India, design thinking is jugaad, maybe.
Yeah, yeah.
So I want to hear from you. Is this design thinking, which is a boardroom word, do you agree with it? The way they have formulated the entire process, because their process is again a process, and I feel design is discovering something which is unknown, and they have never, and that won't have any process. So do you want to throw a light as to, is design thinking becoming a part of academics?
You're asking me this question?
Yeah. Asking you the question.
Okay, we have really gone after the West, and according to me, I have bashed them off enough. But there are some salient features that they bring in. Okay, and that's that little bit of clarity of how this is put up. So design thinking, yes, is a management word. Design thinking is now the new trend and the new fad which is coming up. But application of design thinking, how you're going to look at it and where you're going to apply it, I think that will be of a great value to us. Because as Pranav requires it, or as Dhara requires, and most of our practicing architects and practicing designers require it, there's a certain clarity of thought required. So there's no harm in picking it up and saying, hey, there is a structuring called design thinking. Can we apply it to our requirements, to our need? Does it have the potential to win here? There's no harm in looking at it. There's no harm in reading, understanding, becoming aware. There's no harm. If you align it and start hard selling it, saying that, hey, this is the right way to do it, then I think that's where the problem is. So in academics also, design thinking will come in. Design thinking will be one of the steps taken towards learning, but it will be evaluated correctly and put in place. So that's what I think. I'm sure the practicing architects would have something else to add on for sure.
You, Pranav and Dhara, do you have something to add on?
Dhara, you can take. Because I don't know
I agree to what Gavish said basically, but yes, documentation and learning certain boardroom design things is may be required or can help, but still I feel process of design is something, again, it's application. What you pick up is one thing, but how you apply it, the context becomes very important in application or any design. And that has to have the individual or the team's wisdom applied there. And doing justice to the given context is equally important. Rest of the things I totally agree with what he said.
So we are about to finish this discussion right now, and there are some questions which have come from audiences. Anybody would like to take the questions which is there? Pranav, there's one question from Ashish Patankar. We have a national building code, yet we do not have a national uniform development control regulation. How do we ensure this? Any of you guys would like to take this? Practicing architects? Yeah.
Can you come back with the question, please?
The question is there on the chat box Q&A. The question is, we have a national design code, yet we do not have a uniform development control regulations. How do we ensure it?
What I feel is that one is that, the DCR is more contextual, like what development control rules is applicable to Bombay cannot be applicable to say Pune, or it cannot be applicable to say Nasik or Nagpur, because the plot sizes, the densities, there are many things which govern the factor. So it's very difficult to have like a uniform kind of a rules throughout. But if what I feel is that if you study the DC rules of all the cities, tier 1, tier 2 and tier 3, it is somewhat a derivation of the same thing. Like, the open space criteria, like if it's in Bombay, like the open space densities will be more relaxed because the plot sizes are smaller. If you go to say Pune, the open spaces will be more liberal. If you go say to more Nagpur, it will be still more liberal. So more or less the DC rules is a derivation of the same thing. But it's very difficult to have like a kind of a uniform development control rules, because the contextually the cities are totally different. The densities, like we are planning for densities of 10, 12, sometimes even 15. SRS schemes go up to even 20. There are plots which are like unlimited FSI, because there is like a 6 plot which is a larger plot and the smaller plot is vacant. So that plot potential can be put into this plot. So those kind of situations are not applicable in Nagpur, Nasik and other cities. So it cannot have like one development control. That's what my thinking is.
And making everything uniform somewhere hampers uniqueness too. So, and every climate, every region in India has a different requirement. So a lot of things in terms of codes cannot be made uniform. I mean, there are guiding codes, but there have to be specialized rules or selective regulations that can be interpreted and followed. But at the same time, uniform practices or way of going about the entire process of this licensing and documentation of those buildings. Because what I really saw when I went to one of the government offices there in North Carolina, US, I saw how systematic they are about the whole process of submission. The detail of your materials that are also going to be used are documented by the government, checked at that stage. Here, what does the licensing architect do is just put up elevation for the sake of it being just there in the drawing. So those things can be very much improved or made uniform.
Another
one more, the entire documentation of
one more thing you can do is that there is lot of disparity of how the FSI is computed. Like in Bombay, it is different. Pune is different. Bangalore, it is totally different. So that can be kind of standard.
You're trying to say the approach towards the submission.
Like, no, I'm not saying, like suppose when you say 2.5 FSI on the plot, or say 3 FSI on the plot, what is 3FSI? Like now in Bombay, is 3FSI, staircase lift is free. In Bangalore, is 3FSI, but staircase lifts, corridors are in FSI. So in every city, everything is different. So if that can be standardized, that can be something which can really bring some clarity.
So answer is architects should come together, lobby together, instead of spending on conferences and trade fairs. Collect a kitty, get vendors to fund it, hire somebody to lobby out there, and get our things done. That's the only way I feel. Gaurish, what do you feel?
I don't know about the financials of it, but I definitely think that yes, we collectively can come together. I'll take the opportunity. I don't know whether this is right platform, but there is a group called the IDAC, and they are coming together where the professionals are coming in, the intellectuals are there, and across the board. I mean, there are furniture designers, architects, interior designers. There are people from the services who are there, electrical, acoustics, plumbing. I think the intellectuals are coming together to formulate what is really the path, the vision that can bring design to society. I think kudos to them to have stood up to this particular group together. So I think that is required. I think it's a collective. It doesn't have to be a group. It doesn't have to be architects to sit together. But I think collectively, if you come together, you can perhaps create more towards an ideal situation. But whether you have to lobby and what kind of who will fund it, I would not know. But साथ में आ जाओगे ना तो हो जाएगा.
हो जाएगा. I mean, the moment they're together,
I'm
it
very
can get funded also.
I'm very optimistic. I'm saying कि साथ में आ जाएगा तो हो जाएगा.
So let's leave this question now. Final question, final poll to our audience after watching us. And global advertisers have got this fantastic platform. I would tell all the audiences that if you have any ideas for webinar, please text us. This is an open forum. We are giving a chance to people who have not been on other webinars ever. Dhara, was this your first webinar in this COVID time?
Yes.
Yes. So we would
Yes.
want people like Dhara to, yours too? Fantastic, fantastic. So we want new people to come here and speak. So please write to me on Facebook, on Twitter, on any social media platforms with your ideas, and we will ensure that you are part of this webinar. Let's put the final question to audiences and close this, and let us see what they feel today. Can India be a designer?
Before you close, just because I made the last statement, there was this very good quote, very good 4-liners that Majroo Sultanpuri had put up. And I'm sure everybody has heard about it. It goes like this, मैं अकेला ही चला था जानिबे मंजिल मगर. जानिबे मंजिल is destiny. मैं अकेला ही चला था जानिबे मंजिल अगर लोग साथ आते गए कारवा बनता गया.
Fantastic, fantastic. So
I think just a thought. Let's bring it together. And
next webinar, I won't be there, but I want you all attendees who are attending this webinar to be again here. And next time, I would request the organizers to put everybody on the panel. I'm sure everybody would like to see each other, talk to each other, interact more openly. And let's come to the last question again. Please, can we have the question, and we'll close after this. Can India be a design hub in next 10 years? Let's see what is the change. Wow. 79% are saying yes and 21% are saying no. So if we keep doing together things which are needed, I'm sure India can be next design hub. We would be able to reach out to the authorities and get, the entire policies which are favorable for India becoming design hub. You people have been fantastic audiences. We are running out of time. Fantastic panelists. Lovely. Thank you very much, Gaurish, Mr. Shabir, Dhara, Pranav, and the Art Exchange and the global team. Thank you very much. We are ending this webinar here. Thank you very much for attending.
Thank you, Swapnil, for moderating so well.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It went well.
Yes, thank you, Swapnil. Yes.